My father told every relative, my son is on drugs, and he's been stealing from me. They cut me off overnight. But my medical reports were clean, and when I showed bank statements at a family gathering, my father left the room and didn't come back. My name is Chris. I'm 28. I work as an HVAC technician for a commercial building company in Ohio. I make $61,000 a year. I drive a Chevy Colorado that needs new brake pads, and I have a cast-iron stomach for most things except the specific feeling of watching your grandmother look at you like you're already dead. That feeling, it turns out, requires a different kind of digestion. I'm still working on it. At 10:15 a.m. on a Saturday in April, I parked my truck outside my uncle's house for a family gathering I wasn't invited to. My grandmother Ruth's 81st birthday. I had a manila folder on the passenger seat. Inside that folder were 6 months of my bank statements for sealed drug screenings from 3 different facilities, a highlighted printout of my father's debit card transactions, and a casino loyalty account summary showing 58 visits over 14 months. I sat in the truck for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 because I watched the clock on the dashboard the way you watch a clock when you're trying to decide if you're the kind of person who walks into a room full of people who think you're an addict or the kind who drives home and lets the lie win. I'll tell you what happened inside that house. But first you need to understand how I got to the truck. My father, Dave, is 54. He worked at the same heating and cooling supply company for 22 years, which is where I learned the trade, which is one of those father-son details that used to feel like a gift and now feels like a receipt I can't return. When I was 12, my father taught me how to braze copper pipe in the garage on a Sunday afternoon. He had a portable torch and a ventilation fan he'd rigged from a bathroom exhaust unit, and he made me practice on scrap pieces for 2 hours before he let me touch anything real. He said, "If you can't get the joint right on garbage pipe, you don't deserve to touch the good stuff." I thought about that sentence a lot as a kid. I thought it meant he had standards. Now I think it meant he liked controlling what I was allowed to touch. But that's hindsight. At 12, standing in a garage that smelled like flux paste and the metallic sweetness of a propane flame, my father was the person who knew things and taught them to me, and that was enough. That was more than enough. At 10:17 a.m., sitting in the truck, I looked at my uncle's front door and remembered the last time I'd walked through it. Thanksgiving. 5 months ago. My father had been standing at the counter carving a turkey with a knife that was too small, and everyone kept telling him to use the electric one, and he kept saying the hand knife was fine. He was sweating. I didn't think about why he was sweating. I should have. He'd been at the casino until 4 a.m. the night before, which I didn't know then, but I know now because the loyalty card records show a Wednesday visit the night before Thanksgiving with a $3,400 loss. He carved the turkey with shaking hands because he'd lost our mortgage payment 12 hours earlier and nobody at that table knew except him. My mother, Karen, is 51. She works in billing at a medical supply company. She's the person who keeps every receipt in a shoebox under the bed and balances the checkbook on the first of every month with a pencil, not a pen, because she says pencils let you fix mistakes. She trusted my father the way you trust weather. Not because it's reliable, because checking seems pointless. You take what comes. In March, my mother found a credit card statement she'd never seen before. It was in a jacket pocket, not the jacket she was wearing, his jacket, the brown one with the broken zipper that he only wore on what she thought were late work nights. The card was in her name. $23,000 balance. Cash advances from ATMs with timestamps between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m., all on Friday nights. She didn't know what the charges were for yet. But she noticed the account, and she noticed the balance, and she noticed that her credit score had dropped 190 points and nobody had told her. She asked my father. I don't know exactly what she said. I know what he said, because what he said next is the reason I was sitting in a truck on a Saturday morning with a folder and no invitation. He told her I did it. He told her I'd been stealing from them for months. He told her I'd been using drugs. He told her the credit card charges were mine, that I'd figured out her information, that the cash advances were funding a habit he'd been trying to handle quietly. He told her he didn't want to involve the family, but she'd found the statement, and now he had no choice. He said he'd been protecting her from the truth about their son. Karen believed him. She cried for 2 days. I know this because she told me later, after the folder, after the gathering, that she sat in their bedroom with the door closed and cried in a way she hadn't cried since her own mother died. She believed her husband. She believed the father of her son. And then she picked up the phone and became the messenger. She called Aunt Diane first, then Uncle Pete, then Marcus. She told them what Dave told her, and she told it with the kind of conviction that only comes from genuine grief, because she genuinely believed her son was an addict. The cruelty wasn't hers. The machinery was. My father built the lie, and my mother delivered it with a voice that shook because she thought she was losing me, and every relative who heard her thought they were hearing a mother in pain, and they were. They just had the cause wrong. At 10:19 a.m. in the truck, I was thinking about those phone calls. 46 people heard some version of the same story within 72 hours. The versions weren't identical because my father is smarter than a single story. He told Ruth it was pills. He told my uncle it was cocaine. He told the cousins it was everything. We don't even know the full picture. Each version was calibrated to what that person would find most believable. He didn't panic and blurt something out. He sat at his kitchen table and Googled signs your child is on drugs and how addicts steal from family. The same week he started calling. I know that because Tyler, my buddy who's a lawyer, pulled the browser history during the legal phase. My father researched the lie the way a student researches a paper. He studied the vocabulary. He learned the symptoms. Then he performed it 46 times. And it worked. Because here's the thing about a parent telling people their child is an addict. Nobody questions it. It's the one accusation that comes pre-believed because what parent would make it up? What father would call his own mother and say my son is on drugs if it weren't true? The answer is mine. Mine would. 2 years ago, I had a minor shoulder surgery. Rotator cuff. I was prescribed hydrocodone for 10 days. I took it for 7 and stopped because it made me feel foggy, and I don't like foggy. My father used that. He told the family the painkillers never stopped. He said I'd been spiraling since the surgery. He grafted a real medical event onto a fake narrative, and the scar from my surgery became the proof of an addiction I never had. Everybody remembered the surgery. Everybody could picture the prescription bottle. It was the perfect seed for the lie because it was true enough to germinate. Within 19 days of those calls, my life looked like this. 19 relatives had blocked my number. I have a spreadsheet. I called every single one of them after I realized what was happening. Documented every rejected call, screenshotted every call declined, logged the dates and times. 19 blocks in 72 hours. That's not organic family concern. That's a coordinated campaign with one author and 46 participants who didn't ask a single question before picking a side. 19 days. 19 days of calling people who grew up with me and hearing the line go dead. 19 days of eating dinner at a counter in an apartment that used to feel like mine and now felt like storage for a person nobody was coming to collect. I went to work. I came home. I ate things I don't remember cooking. I ran the dishwasher once with 3 items in it because running it felt like doing something, and doing something felt better than standing in the kitchen pressing my forehead against the refrigerator because the refrigerator was cold and the cold felt like a fact, and I needed facts because everything else had become a story someone else was telling about me. The worst part wasn't the silence. The worst part was the almost calls. I'd see a notification and my chest would do something fast and stupid, and then I'd look at the screen and it was a spam call about a car warranty or a dentist appointment reminder, and I'd put the phone face down on the counter and leave it there for an hour because looking at a screen with no names on it was worse than not looking at all. My grandmother Ruth removed my name from her will. $40,000. Gone on the strength of a phone call from her son about a grandson she'd known for 28 years. She didn't call me. She called her estate lawyer. Marcus, my cousin, the one I grew up with, the one who taught me to ride a bike in his driveway when my father was too busy because my father was always too busy for the things that didn't involve teaching me something practical. Marcus organized a formal intervention. He rented a room at a community center on Oak Street, printed pamphlets from a rehab facility, contacted an addiction counselor named Dr. Something, I never got the full name, spent $800 of his own money trying to save me from a problem that didn't exist. He'd been planning it for 2 weeks. He had a seating chart. He'd written a letter he was going to read to me, which I found out about later because he showed it to me at my kitchen table, and it started with, "Chris, I love you, and that's why I can't watch you do this anymore." And every word of it was genuine, and every word of it was aimed at a version of me that my father had invented. The intervention was scheduled for the same week I walked into that birthday party with the folder. If I'd waited 3 more days, Marcus would have sat me down in a rented room and read that letter, and I would have had to sit there and listen to my cousin cry over someone I never was. The drug rumor also reached my workplace. A family friend who knew my manager mentioned it at a barbecue. Casually. The way people mention things they think are already common knowledge. Did you hear about Dave's kid? By Monday morning, HR had called me in. Random drug screening. I peed in a cup in a clinic bathroom that smelled like hand sanitizer and fluorescent light, and I stared at the wall and thought about how I was proving my innocence in a bathroom stall because my father needed a cover story for his Friday nights. I passed, obviously, but I spent 2 weeks thinking I was about to lose my job over something my father invented at his kitchen table between Google searches. My boss, Greg, who has a photo of a golden retriever on his desk that he talks to during lunch breaks when he thinks nobody's watching, called me into his office after the results came back and said, "Whoever started this almost cost you your career." He was eating a granola bar when he said it. He put it down like the sentence deserved both hands. I didn't tell him it was my father. I didn't know how to make that sentence come out of my mouth and still sound like a person whose life made sense. At 10:22 a.m., I looked at the folder on the passenger seat and opened it one more time. I'd been through it 100 times already, but checking felt like armor. 6 months of my bank statements. Every deposit matching my paycheck. Every withdrawal matching rent, utilities, groceries, gas. No cash withdrawals over $40. No ATM visits after 10 p.m. No transactions anywhere near a casino. Tyler had called them the most boring financial documents I've ever read. That was the point. My life on paper was aggressively, terminally normal. That normal was the weapon. Underneath my statements were my father's. His debit card had hit the casino ATM 31 times in 6 months. Each withdrawal between $400 and $800. And here's the detail that matters. The bank statements didn't say ATM withdrawal. They printed the name of the casino. Right there. Next to every dollar. 31 times. The casino's name sitting on a line that was supposed to be my father's financial life. Tyler highlighted every one of them in yellow. The pages looked like they had a disease. Underneath, that was the joint account history. My parents' savings had gone from $120,000 to $31,000 over 14 months. Tyler mapped every withdrawal to a Friday night. The pattern was so precise you could set a calendar by it. $2,000 to $4,000 every Friday. My mother's deposits going in on the 15th and 30th. My father's withdrawals coming out on Fridays. She was filling a bucket. He was drilling holes in the bottom. Then the drug tests. I didn't get one. I got 4. 3 from different facilities, different dates, different panels. Urine, blood, and hair follicle. The hair follicle covers 90 days of history. All clean. And a 4th test I'd taken that morning at 7 a.m. at an urgent care on Route 9. The paper was still warm in the folder. I wanted them to see the date. Today's date. Not a test from last month that a clever addict could have timed around. Today, at 10:26 a.m., I got out of the truck. The folder was in my left hand. The air smelled like somebody's grill 3 houses down and fresh-cut grass, and the specific April warmth that makes asphalt soft under your shoes. I walked up the driveway. I could hear voices inside. Laughter. Someone's kid screaming the way kids scream when they're happy, not hurt. Normal sounds from a normal family gathering that I wasn't part of because my father had decided I didn't deserve to be. I stood on the front step for about 4 seconds. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips where they were pressed against the folder. Then I opened the door. The door to my uncle's house was unlocked because it's always unlocked during family gatherings, which is the kind of detail you don't think about until you're walking through it uninvited and every head in the room turns. The living room was full. Ruth was in her green chair in the corner, the one with the arms she can push herself up from. Diane was on the couch. Marcus was by the window with a paper plate. My mother was in the kitchen doorway. My father was standing at the counter near the sink, holding a plate of cake, and when he saw me, his jaw tightened, but his hands tightened more. I could see his fingers press into the plate. He said, "You shouldn't be here." I said, "I brought something for Grandma." I walked past him. He smelled like aftershave and something underneath it that might have been sweat or might have been fear. I don't know the difference on him anymore. The room was watching. I could feel 31 sets of eyes tracking me from the door to the center of the room, and nobody said anything, and the only sound was someone's phone buzzing on a side table, and whoever owned it didn't pick it up. Ruth looked at me from her green chair. I hadn't seen her in 19 days. The last time I'd seen her, she knew who I was. Now she looked at me like I was someone she was remembering wrong. Like the version of me in her head, the addict, the thief, was overlaid on the version standing in front of her, and the two didn't fit, but she didn't know which one to trust. My father started to say something. I don't know what. Ruth raised one hand from the arm of the chair. Not dramatically. Just up, about 6 inches, palm flat, the way she does when she's done listening. My father closed his mouth. 3 words from Ruth. Let him talk. The room obeyed because she's 81, and when she speaks once, you listen, because she won't say it twice. I walked to Ruth and placed the folder in her lap. I said, "This is for you. I'm not on drugs. I never stole from anyone. Everything you need is in here." Then I sat down in an empty chair across the room and waited. Ruth opened the folder. She read slowly. She's always read slowly. When I was a kid, she'd read me stories and take so long on each page that I'd fall asleep before the ending, which I think was the point. Now she was reading my bank statements with the same deliberate pace, and the room watched her face the way you watch a judge before a verdict. She picked up my father's statements next. The yellow highlighting was visible from across the room. I watched her eyes move left to right, line by line, the casino name appearing over and over, and her expression didn't change, but her hand did. Her left hand, the one with the ring she's worn for 57 years, moved from the arm of the chair to the arm of the folder and pressed down like she was trying to keep the paper from floating away. She read the drug tests. She held the one from that morning up to the light, like she was checking for a watermark. She looked at the date. She looked at me. She put it down. She read the casino loyalty records. 58 visits. 14 months. VIP status. A man banned from a different casino 2 years earlier for aggressive behavior, who simply switched to a new one and kept going. A complimentary weekend stay offered by a host who called the home phone and asked for Dave by name, and my mother answered and said, "What visits?" and didn't move from the kitchen chair for an hour. That detail wasn't in the folder. But Karen had told me about it on the phone 2 weeks earlier, the night she found the loyalty card in his jacket while doing laundry and Googled the casino name, and found a second card in a different pocket and checked the joint account online for the first time in months and saw the name of the casino printed next to every withdrawal her husband had been making while she slept. The room was quiet for 11 minutes. I timed it again because timing things is apparently what I do now when I don't know how to feel. Nobody interrupted Ruth. Not because they were polite, because they were doing math. $89,000 in casino losses. $23,000 on a credit card opened in my mother's name. 2 CDs liquidated that Karen didn't know had been cashed. And underneath all of it, something Tyler found during the legal phase that I hadn't put in the folder because I didn't know about it yet. A $40,000 home equity loan taken against the house without my mother's signature. Total damage, $129,000. My father had mortgaged their future, drained their savings, opened credit in his wife's name. And when the walls started closing in, he told 46 people his son was a drug addict because he needed more time before anyone checked the math. Ruth closed the folder. She looked at my father. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. The folder was in her lap, and her face said everything her mouth didn't. My mother stood up from the kitchen doorway. She walked into the living room and stopped about 4 feet from my father, who was still holding the plate of cake, which by now he'd been holding for 11 minutes, and the frosting had probably gone soft against his fingers. She looked at him. She said, quietly, the kind of quiet that fills a room louder than yelling ever could, "You told me my son was stealing from us. You were stealing from me." She said it once. She didn't repeat it. She walked past him to where I was sitting and put her hand on my shoulder. Her hand was shaking. It was the first time she'd touched me in 19 days. I could smell her perfume, the same perfume she's worn since I was a kid, the one that used to mean she was getting ready for church or a dinner or something that mattered. She pressed her fingers into my shoulder, and I sat very still because if I moved, I thought the feeling might stop, and I wasn't ready for it to stop. I put my hand on top of hers. She made a sound that wasn't a word. We stayed like that for a while. My father set the plate down on the counter. The frosting left a mark on his thumb, and he didn't wipe it. He walked to the front door. He didn't rush. He didn't stumble. He walked the way a man walks when he's already left the room in his head and his body is just catching up. He opened the door. The April air came in, warm and smelling like that neighbor's grill, and he stepped through it and pulled the door closed behind him. Not a slam. A click. He got in his car. He started the engine. The sound of the ignition was the only sound in the house for about 30 seconds. I watched through the window as his car backed out of the driveway and turned left onto the street, and the brake lights flashed once at the stop sign, and then he was gone. He didn't say a word. He didn't defend himself. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at Ruth. He didn't come back that day, or the next. The plate he left on the counter had a piece of cake on it, with a single bite taken out. Nobody moved it for the rest of the afternoon. It was still there when I left. The room stayed quiet for a while after that. The kind of quiet where people are rearranging what they thought they knew, like moving furniture in a room they'd been living in wrong. Marcus was standing by the window with his paper plate still in his hand, and the food on it had gone cold, and he was staring at the driveway where my father's car had been. Diane was crying. Not loudly. The kind of crying where you're trying to make it stop, and it won't. She'd been the loudest voice in the family saying I needed help, and now she was sitting on a couch looking at a highlighted bank statement and realizing the help was never mine to need. I sat in that chair, and I watched my family process what had happened to us, and part of me wanted to feel vindicated. Part of me wanted to stand up and say every single one of you believed a lie without calling me once. Part of me wanted to ask the room how it felt to be wrong. And a small part of me, the part I've been trying to name for a year and still can't, wanted my father to walk back through that door and explain himself, because even after everything he'd done, the garage still smelled like flux paste in my memory, and the blue flame of the propane torch was still the first thing I ever learned, and I couldn't figure out how to keep the memory and lose the man. I still can't. A week after the gathering, Marcus came to my apartment. He brought the intervention pamphlets. The ones he'd printed at a FedEx for $14.80. The ones with the rehab facility names and the hotline numbers and a checklist titled, "Signs Your Loved One Needs Help." He put them on my kitchen table. He sat across from me. He looked tired, the specific kind of tired that comes from realizing you were the instrument of someone else's lie and you played your part perfectly. He said, "I spent $800 trying to save you from something that wasn't real." He picked up one of the pamphlets. He looked at the checklist. "Your father checked every box on this list. Every single one." I thought he was describing you. He put the pamphlet down. He was describing himself. I didn't say anything. I looked at the checklist. Secrecy, financial instability, mood swings, lying to family members, withdrawal from relationships. Every symptom my father had attributed to me was a symptom he was living with every Friday night between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. at a casino 2 hours north while his family slept. He diagnosed me with his addiction and prescribed the family to cut me off. And the thing that keeps me up, the thing I turn over at 2 a.m. when I can't sleep, is that I don't know if he believed it. I don't know if somewhere in his mind, after Googling the symptoms and rehearsing the calls and telling 46 people the same calibrated story, he started to believe his own version. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. I just know I think about it more than I want to. 2 weeks after the gathering, Ruth called me. "Sure, call," she said. "I put your name back in the will. I should never have taken it out. I won't make that mistake again." She also told me she'd reduced my father's share by the exact amount she'd removed from mine. $40,000. Moved from father to son. She said it wasn't punishment. She said it was correction. I didn't argue with her word choice. Ruth has been using words carefully for 81 years. If she says correction, she means correction. Tyler filed the paperwork on the credit card and the home equity loan. Karen filed for legal separation. The $23,000 card in her name, the $40,000 loan against the house she thought was paid off, the $89,000 in casino losses that my father was supposed to be putting into a retirement he already cashed out. $129,000 total. That's the number. Tyler says it might be higher, but $129,000 is the number we can document. My mother's credit score is rebuilding. It'll take about 3 years. My father is living in the basement of a friend's house 2 towns over. He has a court-mandated counseling appointment every Tuesday. He drives past the casino on his way there. I don't know if he slows down. A year later, Ruth had another birthday. Same house, same living room, same unlocked front door. I was invited this time. I brought a card and a box of the lemon cookies she likes from a bakery on Route 4 that charges too much, but makes them the way she remembers from when she was young. Marcus was there. Diane was there. My mother was there. And she looked different. Not better or worse, just different. The way people look when they've been through a year that aged them in a direction they didn't choose. My father wasn't there. There was a chair in the corner by the window that nobody sat in and nobody mentioned, and the party went on around it like furniture that had always been empty. Someone had put a coat on it. I don't know whose coat. Nobody moved it. Ruth called me over near the end. The cake had been cut. Marcus was doing dishes in the kitchen. I could hear the water running and the sound of plates clinking and someone laughing about something unrelated to anything that had happened in this house a year ago. Ruth put her hand on my arm, the same hand that had pressed down on the folder a year earlier, like she was keeping the pages from floating away. She didn't say anything about the folder or the will or the year that had passed or the chair by the window that nobody was sitting in. She said, "You look rested." I told her I was. She squeezed my arm once and let go. That was enough. Thanks for staying with this one. It wasn't easy to tell. Subscribe, comment, share, whatever feels right. I'll be back.